The shocking news of the passing of Hulk Hogan at 71 that we briefly discussed at the beginning of the show today, and to help us sort of verbalize it, contextualize it better, Ariel Helwani joined the program. Ariel, what's going on, man? Thanks for joining us.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you? Hope everyone is doing well. Yes, very, very sad news. Somewhat shocking news. There were some reports, some from people who knew him quite well, most notably Bubba the Love Sponge recently, saying that he wasn't in the best of health. We had him on the show just a few months ago, and I've seen people post pictures from that interview this morning, commenting on the way in which he looked, but just 71 years old. And there's a lot of thoughts, there's a lot of feelings that are going through me right now because this is a very, very complicated legacy. This is a very complicated figure in the world of sports entertainment. And I don't know let me be very clear, the reason why it is complicated isn't the same by any stretch, but it is reminiscent to a degree of when O.J. Simpson passed away, because O.J. Simpson had a first act where he was beloved, and he had a second act where he was beloved, and then he had a third act where he was not beloved, and a fourth act where he was not beloved. And it is somewhat similar in this regard when talking about Hulk Hogan's legacy and everything that he did for the pro wrestling world, because in my opinion, he is the most famous pro wrestler of all time. When you talk about a Mount Rushmore, if you don't have Hulk Hogan on it, I'm not talking about from a technical standpoint. I'm talking about like someone who had an impact on the business. He has to be on there. And if you're ranking them, he has to be number one. I think he's the most famous pro wrestler of all time. You can make a case for The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, but the case is in large part due to what he did post pro wrestling. If The Rock would have just remained pro wrestler, then I don't think he reaches, the superstardom levels that he's at today and beyond, and then some. Hulk Hogan, in large part, is who he is as famous as he is because of everything he did in pro wrestling. And if you were a kid of the 80s and 70s and early 90s, you know all about this. There is no pro wrestling boom. There is no WWF boom. There is no WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan. In January of 1984, when he beats the Iron Sheik at Madison Square Garden, that changed everything for Vince McMahon and WWF. They strapped the rocket to him. Prior to that, he was just a big man competing in Japan, in AWA, in Minnesota, but Vince saw something in this guy and said, "This is our guy. This is the all-American hero that we need." And I was relatively young at that point. I was 2 years old, but I've said this story a million times. I remember being in a video store and seeing Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, who was a gigantic deal in the 80s, on the cover of a box of a VHS and saying, "I need to watch that." And I rented that, and that's how I learned about WWF, and that was the box for WrestleMania 1. And so when they put that title on him in January of 1984, when he beats the dastardly Iron Sheik, now in the midst of everything going on between the U.S. and Iran, and of course Russia, all that, like, he was the perfect guy. Say your prayers, eat your vitamins, work out, do all that stuff. Red, white, and blue, all American, incredible walkout. And then, going into 1985, WrestleMania 1, Madison Square Garden, the biggest gamble of McMahon's career at that point, he's hosting SNL the night before with Mr. T. The night before WrestleMania 1 at Madison Square Garden, Hulk Hogan, pro wrestler, is hosting Saturday Night Live with Mr. T in order to gain awareness. He's the first pro wrestler to ever be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He was, in my opinion, you could say that there were three uber famous athletes in America that were known worldwide. It was in no particular order. It was Hulk Hogan, Mike Tyson, Michael Jordan. They were the guys. In the 80s, there was no one bigger than them. And I'm not talking about Muhammad Ali, who was a big deal in the 70s. He wasn't active anymore in the late 80s, 90s. It was Hogan, it was Tyson, it was Michael Jordan. And then there were obviously other guys. Wayne Gretzky was a big deal in Canada. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Dan Marino, those guys. But no one touched them. And Hogan was at the very top of the list. And he was a pro wrestler. Nothing more, nothing less. WrestleMania 1, WrestleMania 2, WrestleMania 3, Pontiac Silverdome, 70, 90, whatever thousand amount of people you want to say were there. It was gigantic. He slams Andre the Giant. WrestleMania 4, WrestleMania 5, head-to-head with the Ultimate Warrior, the passing of the torch at the Skydome. These were iconic, is selling him short. He carried pro wrestling. He carried that company. He put the entire industry on the map. Without him, it doesn't explode into the global business that it is today. And then it starts to get a little complicated in the 90s. It starts to get complicated with the steroid trial, where he's on the Arsenio Hall show and he's asked point blank, did you take steroids? He says no. And then later he is forced to reveal that he did in fact take steroids. It gets complicated when he leaves WWE and does a few movies that didn't quite hit. Suburban Commando, Mr. Nanny, Thunder in Paradise, a TV show that did not succeed. And then he goes over to WCW in the mid 90s and the act is wearing thin. People aren't taking to it. And he doesn't, maybe get enough credit for this. He recognizes, and our friend Mark Ramundi wrote all about this in his tremendous book, which I have somewhere here, Say Hello to the Bad Guys, about the NWO. He changes course and he turns into one of the greatest bad guys in the history of the business. By turning heel in 1996 with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, by starting the NWO and by being the frontman for that, he added another 10 or so years to his career that was fizzling, was failing at that point, and became again one of the biggest acts, one of the biggest draws in the business, and one of the biggest heels in the business. And I'll never forget being at WrestleMania 18 at the Sky Dome, now known as the Rogers Center, and it's Hogan versus The Rock. It's Icon versus Icon, and it was billed as Rock good guy versus Hogan bad guy, and the entire crowd, 67 or so thousand people, said, no, we're not doing this. We're cheering for the Hulkster. And on that day, he turns babyface. And then I went to Monday Night Raw the Monday after, and I was at the Bell Center in Montreal. And I think at this point, off the top of my head, I think it was a 10 to 12 minute ovation where he just literally stood in the middle of the ring, and everyone in Montreal who was in attendance that night stood and clapped for him because he was back in WWE after all these years, and then had a pretty nice run afterwards. But then again, it gets even more complicated, and the worst of all, first with the sex tape, and then the lawsuit with Peter Thiel and Gawker, and then what really changed everything for everyone about exactly, I believe, 10 years ago, July of 2015, where more footage from these tapes come out, and he is caught saying horrifically, horribly racist things about someone that his daughter Brooke was dating, and about black people in general, and he never quite recovered from that. Now, there will be some people like Eric Bischoff, who we talked to about this on Monday's program about his complicated legacy, who will say like, oh, this is just a vocal minority that has held on to this. But no, I mean, I was talking to some friends today who are huge wrestling fans, who are black, who say that I love this guy and now I hate him, and I never was able to forgive him. And you saw what happened January 6th at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood on the Netflix debut. The crowd booed him, and he told us on the show, no, they booed me because I was playing the bad guy. He wasn't playing the bad guy. He came out with the red and yellow. He came out with the flag. He wasn't playing the bad guy. And there are wrestlers since who have said, Shelton Benjamin notably, who said, when he spoke to us about it, because remember, in the aftermath of this, WWE kind of parted ways with him and wanted nothing to do with him, took him off the website, the Hall of Fame, all that stuff. And wrestlers in the aftermath said, he didn't really show the contrition that we thought he was going to show. He didn't seem apologetic. His message to us was, don't get caught. I got caught on camera. I got caught saying horrible things, racist things, offensive things. Don't get caught. He didn't, according to them, I wasn't obviously in the room, he didn't say, I'm sorry, I will never live this down, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why it's incredibly complicated, because you see today people dealing. I'm going through. I'm sorry for going so long here, but it's like this guy represents everything that I loved about pro wrestling. He, to me, he is my childhood. For many people, feel the same. He is 1980s wrestling. I watched his cartoon, Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling, the stuff with Cyndi Lauper and MTV and Captain Lou Albano. Like, this is my childhood. The red and yellow. When he came back, it was unbelievable. I wanted to be at WrestleMania 18 because it was his first WrestleMania after a decade away. I wanted to be at that Raw in Montreal because it was his big return to WWF television and all this stuff. So like this guy, it's okay to say it's complicated, and it's okay to say that at the end you weren't a fan and you were disgusted by the things that he said. But to me, you have to acknowledge who he was in the 80s and the 90s and what he did for wrestling. If you're a wrestling fan, no bigger star. It's him, it's Austin, it's The Rock, and maybe Cena. No one sold more tickets than him. No one sold more merch. And look at those three guys that I mentioned, and Ric Flair is on that list as well. The majority of those guys are post late 90s and beyond. In the 80s, in my opinion, especially in the Northeast and around the world, it was Hulk Hogan. Ric Flair wasn't quite known around the world like he was because he was in WWF and Ric Flair was WCW for the most part. And WWF was bigger in the 80s. No one bigger than him. And he can walk anywhere in the world. He can walk in India. He can walk in Japan. He can walk in Brazil, China, anywhere in the world, and everyone recognized him because of the Fu Manchu, because of the hair, because of the muscles, the 24-inch pythons, the brother, and all that stuff. And we can't forget about Thunder Lips here. The Rocky movie was huge in those early 80s days, and not a lot of people could say that. Again, The Rock could say that now, but that's in large part due to what he did post-WWF. He was gigantic, but post-WWF, WWE, it propelled him to another level. Hogan was who he was because of pro wrestling. And so that's why, in my opinion, he's, the biggest, most famous pro wrestler of all time. And that's why this is a very sad day if you are a pro wrestling fan who is able to understand that his legacy was a very complicated and complex one.
Yeah, very well said. You've laid out kind of a fantastic illustration of kind of maybe the idea that Hulk Hogan, the character, is one that deserves the respect and has been admired by wrestling fans for his accomplishments and what he was able to do and carved out that career. And then maybe there's the issue with Terry, right? With Terry Bollea. How do you think WWE is going to recognize Hulk Hogan? Like, what do you think happens from here in terms of WWE's next steps after his passing?
I think they will recognize him. I think that they will honor him. Remember, they brought him back recently. His last appearance was that January appearance on the 6th of January at the Intuit Dome on the Netflix debut, but they are in business with his beer company, Real American Beer, I believe it's called. Like, that's one of their top sponsors. So they aren't distancing themselves from him despite all of this. Like, they have brought him back long ago after the incident with the tapes and him being caught saying those things. So I think that they will honor him. Their next show is tomorrow. That's Friday Night SmackDown. And I wouldn't be surprised. I would be honestly very surprised if they don't do anything. I'm sure they will. Their social media has honored him already. Paul Levesque, Triple H, who's sort of the face of the company now, has honored him in a very, I think, respectful and classy way and a positive way on social media. So I don't think that they are going to lean into the complicated nature of his legacy. I think that they're going to honor him, and just my opinion, I don't necessarily have a problem with that because, again, to your point, they are honoring Hulk Hogan and what he meant to the company and to the business, not necessarily what Terry Bollea did. Terry Bollea didn't say those things on camera, on TV as Hulk Hogan on WWF television. And so again, it's very black. Like if a friend of mine tells me like, nah, screw that guy, screw everything he represents, I understand. I understand why you feel that way. And if a person wants to say like, this guy represented my childhood and I hope he gets his flowers and without him there is no pro wrestling and he's a giant and an icon, and I understand that as well. It's a really, really it's a unique one. And I don't think people struggled as much when OJ passed because it was so black and white. Also, OJ's his heyday was a little before Hogan, 70s. So, I didn't live through the OJ Bills era. I knew him as the actor, TV star / guy who was a part of the trial of the century. I lived through Hulkamania. I lived through that all. So for me, I'm able, I think, to compartmentalize it and honor the wrestler while also acknowledging the things that happened in the latter portion of his life.
Yeah, and with OJ, it was the crimes were so heinous, and then he had the downfall where he was stealing merch and everything like that. And by the time it came to his passing, I think people just had such a way of viewing him. Whereas, like you've put so eloquently with Hulk Hogan, this guy was a lot of people's childhood, and they weren't able to necessarily separate it, and just will always be a fan of him.
Yeah. And like Hogan brought so much joy, especially in the 80s and the 90s as a heel to so many people. I mean, as far as like entertainers go, he was just unbelievable at doing it. And I think if you're a pro wrestling fan who grew up in that era, you appreciated the fact that he kind of made wrestling cool and he bridged the gap between it being this niche thing and this mainstream thing. And so like when he I was a little too young for Thunder Lips and Rocky 3 and all that, but I remember his next big movie was No Holds Barred, and that was with Zeus. And I remember when it was like Hulk Hogan is going to be in a movie. Are you kidding me? Like he's going to be on the big screen. Like you could go in a theater and watch Hulk Hogan, and then they used that, turned it into an angle and all that stuff. And like I'll admit, I watched Mr. Nanny and I watched Suburban Commando. Like we all, like anyone who tells you now in the aftermath who says like we didn't want to support him because of X, Y, and Z, like that's BS. If you're born in 80, 81, 82, 83, like I am 82, like you supported everything he did, even if he wasn't your favorite. Bret Hart was my favorite, but he represented wrestling. He was the face of pro wrestling. He was the face of the company. And then when he left, it was somewhat unceremonious and sad. And I remember thinking like, man, this guy's in WCW. This guy can't be in WCW. Like he's WWF. What the hell's going on here? Like I didn't really pay attention. I knew about the trial, but I'm 12, 11 during the trial. This guy's WCW, but then he turns heel because in the early days of WCW, he was doing the same old hits. It was the red and yellow, the Fu Manchu. It all looked the same, but it just seemed a little bit sadder. It was at the Universal Studios lot. Like there were less people there. I was like, man, this is kind of sad. This guy fell off. This guy isn't as cool as he once was. He's stuck in the 80s. And then he turns heel. And we talked about it when Cena turned heel. Like people were saying that it was going to be on the same level. How has that aged? Like you have no idea how seismic. What? Hulk Hogan, Mr. Take Your Vitamins and Say Your Prayers, has a black beard now, and he's telling us to piss off, and he's like a bad guy, and he's wearing all black, and he's Hollywood Hogan now. Like, man, the fact that he was able to do that was unbelievable. And we were just talking about the reality show too. The Hogan's Knows Best gave him some mileage too. And unfortunately, I don't think that was good for the family dynamic and his marriage and all that. But so many chapters, so many different eras, and yeah, like my parents texted me about this. My grandmother knows who he is. Like everyone knows this guy, and you can't say that about a lot of people who were stars back then. Just a real giant, a real icon, and yeah, bummed. I will admit, like I had him on the show and. I tried to ask him those questions, and I'm sure some people didn't like the answers or the questions or whatever it was. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, I can't believe. Well, I'll tell you guys a story. So they're doing this Real American freestyle wrestling thing, right? And who knows? I'm sure that's going to continue, and I hope that their Fox Nation deal continues, and I think it's a great opportunity for those wrestlers. But it's Hulk Hogan's name is attached to it. Eric said himself on the show on Monday, he doesn't know if he gets the Fox Nation deal if Hulk Hogan is not attached to it, and he's got some things in the works.
He doesn't close doors; he opens doors. His name being associated with it is what opens doors for their business.
He has a bar that's opening across the street from Madison Square Garden. That's in the works right now. There's a Netflix series that's in the works about him.
About Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, that he showed a clip where I think he actually talked about it on our show. He said Netflix is following me, and I don't know if that went over people's heads, but like, so we'll see what becomes of all of this. In any event, there was a period maybe in February or March where Chad Bronstein, who was sort of like the brains behind Real American Freestyle Wrestling. He's manager to the likes of Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan and Juliana Pena. And so he texted me. I was sitting exactly in this chair. This is probably February, March or so. And he's like, hey, do you have 2 minutes? And I said, yeah, sure. And so he calls me, and I put my phone on speaker just because I didn't want to hold it here. And he's like, Ariel, I got someone here who wants to talk to you. And he goes, what's going on, brother? And it's Hulk Hogan. Like I know that voice. And I'm like, holy crap, Hulk Hogan is calling me right now. Like if you would have told 1988 me, what? That's absurd. Like call me Mark, call me whatever. Like that's Hulk Hogan on the phone. And they were telling me about Real American freestyle wrestling. and what they have planned and what they're going to announce and what do I think of it. Eric Bischoff was there as well, and that's surreal in its own right. And and I hung up the phone and I went to tell my wife and kids, like, I just spoke to Hulk Hogan on the phone. That's insane. And so that's just a story. That's just a thing about like how crazy this life is, but also what he meant to people of my age, of my age bracket who grew up. No one bigger than him. And I would put him up there with any celebrity, sports, entertainment, music of that generation, of that era of the 80s. In my opinion, he was up there. I don't think it's crazy to say with the likes of Tyson, Jordan, even the Michael Jacksons of the world. He was that big at the time.
He truly did transcend into bigger than wrestling, into almost bigger than life. I mean, I was never a wrestling fan at that age. Obviously, the peak of his powers, I was not born or incredibly young for, and I know all about him, everything, brother, all that, the yellow and the red, all that. So yeah, he truly was just one of the biggest superstars any sport has ever seen.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And then, had a couple of business ventures. He had the spaghetti thing that he did. I forget. It was like a chain of,
right?
No, it was like a
chain of spaghetti restaurants.
Yes. Let me see here. Hulk Hogan.
Maybe I'm just thinking
this
of
was.
a meme.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it.
This was the time that
Pasta Mania.
There it is. This is the yes. Look at that.
Hulk Hogan's Pasta Mania.
Yes, this was the time that George Foreman, blew up with his grill, and so Hogan came out with Pasta Mania.
Oh my God, it was like an actual restaurant.
Yeah, man.
You would choose your pasta, angel hair shells, nuggets, fettuccine. You would choose your sauce, marinara, Alfredo, pesto, white clam. This is insane.
Not everyone could pull that off.
No one can pull this off. You could add Swedish meatballs, beef stroganoff. This is Hulkaroni and cheese.
Yeah, and so he had things like that. He had the movies. Again, there it is. There's the logo right there.
Oh, that's incredible.
It's like the famous. Yeah, that was like the actual cover of it or whatever. Great shirt there.
It was in the Mall of America
in Minnesota.
Yeah,
there was just one.
It says that Hulk Hogan had a restaurant at the Mall of America called Pasta Mania.
Yeah, there it is. But then, yeah, and that Rick, correct me if I'm wrong. Were you at Gawker when all that happened, or no?
I was at Gawker.
Oh, wow.
When all that was going down. I was not involved, obviously, directly in it.
You were like an intern, no?
I was an intern. I was an intern on the reality TV video side of things. Like, I would be cutting clips of like, So You Think You Can Dance? Like, and no, was that the one with Lil Mama? Whatever the one with Lil Mama was. But that was my role. And then obviously on the sports side, I was sitting in the office, like Deadspin's over there, and they released the sex tape and started the whole thing that then got them basically shuttered and put out of business, and then obviously also led to the revelation of Hulk Hogan's racist comments that then caused this controversial view about him from then on. So yes, I was there, but not involved. Just off to the side watching.
Yeah, no, of course. I just.
But yes, it was an insanely wild time.
Insane. There's a documentary about that. Peter Thiel, who's the founder of I think PayPal, gets involved, and
yes, he's basically funding the suit.
Yes, and that that torpedoes Gawker as a company. But if it was just that, if it was just left at that, it would have been one thing. But then when the sound, the footage, the audio tapes come out of him saying these heinous things, then it turns out to be a completely different, can of worms. And I think that's when everyone turned on him. Also worth noting, I think some people didn't love when he, spoke at the GOP convention and all that stuff and went a little bit more political. Again, like, I don't think that's a reason to hate someone. The stuff that he said is a reason to hate someone, not like someone, not respect someone. But all these things combined in the back end made him, this polarizing, controversial figure. But then you talk to the Bischoffs of the world and they say, like, that's this. Like, we walk indoors and everyone wants to talk to Hulk Hogan. So complicated.
Thanks for joining us, man. We appreciate it. You put it into much better words than we ever could. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Ariel.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Rest in peace, Hulk Hogan, Terry Bollea, and yeah, unfortunate to talk about these things. A tough week. Ozzy Osbourne a couple days ago, beloved, and now another icon of our childhood. Appreciate it, guys. Have a great rest of the show.
Thanks, Ariel.
Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.